Chapter 12. For several days Ranofer did not go near the little green room in the thicket. He dared not tell Haket anything about the goblet. Haket would become wildly excited. He would make elaborate spying plans. There was no telling what he would do. Whatever he did, Ranofer feared he might overdo it. Then the gods alone knew what trouble would descend upon them both. On the other hand, he did not see how he could sit and talk with Haket and meet his eyes, unless he did tell him what had happened. I should trust him, Ranofer argued with himself. I trusted him before, about the wineskins, and think how he stood by me then. He knows how to keep his tongue from flapping. His father taught him, and he proved it was so. The arguments had no effect. He could not tell anyone about the goblet. Not Haket, not anyone. The only solution was to stay away from the thicket. It did not occur to him that Haket might finally come and find him. However, that was precisely what Haket did. He was standing outside the shop one evening as Ranofer emerged to start for home. "Asked, what are you doing here?" Ranofer stammered. "Waiting for you, of course." Haket's snub-nosed face had lighted with relief at the sight of him. Now he stood gazing at him in such a puzzled, questioning way that Ranofer felt sweaty and hot with guilt. "Where were you all these days?" Haket asked. "I feared that Gaboo of yours had done one of those awful things he's always threatening. The ancient and I, we didn't know what had happened." "Nothing has happened," Ranofer mumbled, with a hasty glance over his shoulder. Gaboo was only a few paces away, inside the shop. "Come, let's get away from here." As they started in the direction of the thicket, he added, "I have been very busy, that's all. Pi has kept me working until late, and sometimes at midday too, and—" He swallowed and gave up trying to find an explanation that would sound reasonable. However, Haket quickly began to chatter about Setma and the conversation the ancient had overheard, and when that was exhausted, he launched into a story about the ancient's donkey, who had gone lame in one foot a few days before, and had required much rubbing with castor bean oil and daubing with cool mud. Listening, Ranofer cautiously began to relax, and once they had reached the little green room in the thicket, had greeted the ancient and examined Lotus's foot, which was well again now, and sat a while together in the old way. He decided that it was not, after all, impossible to be with Haket and still keep silence about the goblet. Haket was as full of talk as ever, and either failed to notice that Ranofer said little, or tactfully ignored the fact. As for the ancient, though his one bright eye rested searchingly on Ranofer several times, he asked no questions. Only once did they approach the dangerous subject, so suddenly that Ranofer had a very bad moment indeed before he realized he was safe. Without warning, Haket said, "Ranofer, I have an idea about the tomb affair." "Tomb affair?" Ranofer stammered. "The drawing, you remember, the little room you did not understand." "Oh." Relief washed over Ranofer like cold water. He did remember now about the scroll and Gaboo's anger, though he had not thought of the incident since the day it occurred. The goblet had driven away everything else from his mind. "In my opinion," Haket was saying in his craftiest manner, "they are going to use that room themselves, Gaboo and Wenamon." "Use it themselves?" "Aye, for meeting in secret and for hiding the gold they steal. Now that Setma will not take it away from them." The ancient gave his high-pitched chortle of laughter. "Asked, young one, you should be a tail spinner in the marketplace. You'd soon be rich, with the coppers folk would pay to hear such fine, unlikely stories. Do you think even thieves are going to share a departed one's dwelling with him, of their own accord?" "But the tomb is not occupied yet," Haket argued. "It is not even finished, is it, Ranofer? They could make a separate entrance." "The tomb is not even begun," Ranofer said more abruptly than he intended. "Oh, not even begun?" Haket sounded so disappointed that Ranofer was ashamed of his curtness. Anxious though he was to leave the subject of tombs, he went on. "They will not start work on it until flood time, after the High Nile festival. That is 3 weeks away. Then it will be months in building, with workmen in and out every day. They would not dare hide anything there." "Nay, they would not," Haket said sadly. "It was a fine idea anyway," the ancient chuckled. "Fine if it had worked, and as the fish said when it tried to take a walk." Haket grinned. "Never mind, I'll think of something else." Ranofer wanted to tell him not to try, not to think or speak of tombs again. Instead, he changed the subject hastily. "Just think, 3 weeks and it will be the festival." It was a good choice. All three began to talk of the great feast day of the year, when the waters of the great river would rise at last above their banks and all the canals would be thrown open to receive the life-giving flood. There would be no work that day for anyone. All Egypt would make holiday in the streets, and the lowliest water carrier would feast at Pharaoh's expense and drink barley beer for free. The prospect of honey cakes and dates, and all the dried fish he could eat, lifted even Ranofer's spirits. He agreed with enthusiasm to spend the feast day with his two friends from dawn to dark, and thought no more of tombs or goblets until they parted on the thoroughfare. On the way home, though, his troubles came back like Kef's, overtaking him on silent wings. The tomb drawing clung in his mind, and so did Hacket's idea that there was some thieves' plans connected with that little room. Ranofer was sure it had nothing to do with a meeting place, or stealing gold with goldsmiths, or anything Hacket had imagined. But could it have something to do with robbing tombs? He did not see how. Not only was the tomb not finished, not even begun, but its owner, Pharaoh's master of storehouses, was still very much alive. There might be no burial, and thus no treasure in the tomb for years. There could be no connection between the drawing and the goblet. Goblet had simply been short-tempered that day, because he knew the goblet was hidden in his room, and his guilt outweighed heavy on him, and now it was hidden in the scroll room, where it weighed upon Ranofer. Search as he might, every time he had a chance, he had not found it yet. Goblet must have Kefs in league with him, Ranofer thought in despair. No mortal could hide a thing so well. Perhaps he has taken it away again, after all, some time when I could not see, perhaps late at night, but I have not heard the hinges for a long time now. Nay, it is still there, it must be. Then why can't I find it? Day followed day, the river rose steadily toward its banks, growing broader, fuller, swifter. Ranofer's life remained a narrow routine of worry, occasional beatings, and work, varied only by the hour at midday or evening with his friends in the marsh. He was glad he no longer felt it necessary to avoid them, but it was still necessary to avoid telling them what he knew, and he often wished powerfully that it were not so, because it became more and more obvious that their meetings were not quite as successful as before. The things he could not speak of hung over the little green room like an invisible presence, ruining, it seemed to Ranofer, everything he did speak of. Once, when the ancient was not with them, Hacket brought the matter into the open. Ranofer, something troubles you. Something has happened. Why do you not tell me? Perhaps I could do something. Nay, there is nothing, Ranofer said as casually as he could. You mean nothing I could do? I mean nothing has happened. Let us talk some more about the festival. We have talked about it, only a few moments ago. Then I began telling you the new idea I had about the little room in the drawing, and you went back into your shell, and now suddenly you want to talk about the festival again. Aye, I do. It is more pleasant, is it not, than tombs and rooms, and Ranofer's voice trailed off into a sulky mutter as he sat scowling at his toes and feeling miserable. After a long, uncomfortable silence, Hacket said wryly, Do I make myself unpleasant, as the viper said to the asp? Ranofer grinned in spite of himself, and in a moment they were laughing together, though still uncomfortably. I did not mean to be poisonous, Ranofer said. Nor I. I am sorry. It is only that you seem so different. Different? Ranofer raised his eyes in alarm. Did the secret show so plainly? Perhaps not different, Hacket studied him thoughtfully. You seem more as you were when I first knew you at the Gold House, when questions angered you, and you wanted only to be left alone. I do not want to be left alone, Ranofer said miserably, or perhaps I do, just for a while. I can't explain. No matter, Hacket said. After a moment he smiled. Perhaps we had better talk about the festival. Everyone talked about it these days, made plans about it, and thought of little else. Ranofer tried hard to do the same, but the goblet lurked always at the edge of his thoughts. More than ever, he hated Goblet and his heavy fist, and the evil thing he had done. He hated most the feeling that the evil had spread like a plague to himself. With every day that passed, the secret he knew weighed heavier and guiltier on his mind. A criminal walked free in the streets because Ranofer, the son of Thutmose, was afraid to tell the crime. Still, in Amon's name, what would it do to get himself murdered or imprisoned by babbling such a tale without proof? If I had taken the goblet when I had the chance, he thought, if I were sure it was in the scroll room now, I wish I knew what to do, and how to do it. Then suddenly, on the day before the festival, his wish came devastatingly true. At midday, he went to the thicket to make final plans with his friends for the holiday. Hacket arrived late, full of news, and bursting to tell it. Sit down quickly, Ranofer. Here, have this cheese. You'll never guess what has happened. What? Ranofer asked warily. He had learned not to expect too much from Hacket's enthusiasms. Well, I've been spying again, only by chance this time to be truthful. I was coming to meet you, just now, just a few moments ago, and I saw Wenamon ahead of me, so I thought I would follow him just for a little while. He turned into the street of the potters, at that corner where Abba's shop stands. Well, there is a big shed next to it, only a roof really, with poles to support it, where Abba dries his pots and jars. I know, go on. Something about this story was making Ranofer exceedingly uneasy. Surely Gaboo would not hide treasures in pots and jars, but, well, Gaboo was waiting there. He was pretending to look at pots, strolling about idly, but really he was waiting. Wenamon made as if he would pass right by, then pretended to see Gaboo, quite by accident, and stopped to greet him. Anyone watching, except me, of course. Hacket's eyes narrowed craftily, would have thought they strolled into the shed merely to find shade, while they exchanged a few civilities. Oh, it was cleverly done, but I was cleverer. What did they say? Could you hear them? Tell me quickly. Hacket would not be hurried. I'm coming to that. I slipped into the shed, too, and crept among the benches and tables where the pots are put to dry, and found a place quite close to them where I could hide behind a stack of new-made water jars. It took me some time, of course, because I dared not make any noise, so I did not hear the first of what they said. What did you hear? Please hurry. I heard Gaboo's voice first, and he spoke very low, but it made a chill go up my spine. The way he spoke, he said, "A curse on the festival. Fancy anyone cursing the High Nile feast." Go on, Ranofer begged. I am. A curse on the festival, he said. The Nile can flood without us. Meet me at daybreak beside the broken tree. It is safe enough now. Everything in Ranofer seemed to stop. Heart, breath, thoughts. It was like the stone-cutting shop at midday when the clatter suddenly died to silence all at once. Hacket must have been satisfied with the effect he had created, for his eyes glistened. Then Wenamon said, "It would be safer a year hence." And Gaboo growled at him low like a vicious dog. "Or never. I've waited long enough," he said. "I made the plan. Now I want my reward, before I am too old to enjoy it. Do as I bid you." I must get a hold of myself, Ranofer thought. I must think of something very fast that will make Hacket forget all this. But what? And then, he said in as calm a tone as he could manage, then Wenamon said, "And what of afterwards?" At first I did not know what he meant, but soon I did, for Gaboo smiled in a very unpleasant way and said, "I have attended to that only an hour ago. Setma is not the only captain on the river, as I told him at the time." So Gaboo had found a new smuggler, and the goblet would soon be gone, if it were not already. Go on, said Ranofer, swallowing. That is all. Gaboo turned without another word and went off down the street, putting his feet down like chunks of stone. In a moment, Wenamon left too. Ranofer was silent, concentrating on keeping his expression casual, while his mind spun furiously. Well, Hacket said, what do you think of it? I do not know what broken tree they mean, but if they were meeting tomorrow, should we not spy on them again and miss the feasting? We can feast later, when we have found out where they go. Surely you would not miss this chance. I do not think it is a chance, Ranofer said suddenly, out of sheer necessity. Inspiration came. Gaboo is going to Abydos today. We cannot follow him there. Hacket's face fell in ludicrously. To Abydos? Aye, I heard him tell Pi so. Then why would he— Oh, I suppose the broken tree is there. No doubt Wenamon is going too. Aye, very likely. Ranofer nibbled on his cheese, attempting to seem thoughtful and even disappointed, looking anywhere but at Hacket. Hacket was silent for some minutes. It does seem strange, he said, at last in a puzzled voice, that they would make their plans here, where they are known and might be overheard. Why not on the boat, going down the river? Perhaps they're going on different boats. Where do I find these explanations so fast? Ranofer thought, disgusted with himself. I am becoming as good a liar as that Babylonian. That is it, of course. Hacket sounded disgusted with himself, too, for not seeing something so apparent. Naturally, they would not travel together. It might seem suspicious. Doubtless they will pretend not to know each other at all when they get to Abydos. Ast! I wish we had a friend who sails a Nile boat. I would give my new shanty to see what they do tomorrow. There's no doubt some goldsmith who will be the poorer for it. Aye, I'm afraid you are right. Ranofer gave a sigh that Hacket need not know what was one of relief instead of disappointment. Haket sighed too and got to his feet. It's clear we can do nothing about it this time. I am sorry. It was such a good bit of spying. I will meet you tomorrow as we planned. At least we have the festival to console us. With a grin, he led the way out through the curtain of reeds, and Ranofer followed. He had not tasted a bite of the good cheese he had eaten, and the festival had dwindled to nothing in his mind. He knew quite well that the only one thing could lure Gaboo from the prospect of free barley beer, the gold of the tombs. If he and that vulture, who was his friend, did not mean to join the merrymaking tomorrow, they were almost certainly going to the Valley of the Tombs of the Kings in broad daylight at this time, while all Thebes was occupied with feasting. Profoundly disturbed, Ranofer scarcely knew what he did all afternoon at the shop. When work ended for the day, he wandered through the scorching streets, blind and deaf to the spirit of holiday already sweeping the crowds around him. He had no desire to go home, but no reason for going anywhere else. He found himself at last pushing through the rustling stiff reeds of the papyrus marsh, and the water lapping almost to his knees. The deep mud of the shallows was cool and soothing to his bare feet, but he could take no pleasure in it. Over and over in his mind appeared the image of the familiar mummy-shaped outline of the western hills, and the sheer red cliffs that hid the valley of the tombs of the kings. How could he feast tomorrow, knowing that every bit of honey cake How could he feast tomorrow, knowing with every bit of honey cake what was happening yonder? He would choke on the food. "Aye, look, my lotus, we have a visitor," cried a familiar voice almost at his elbow. He spun around to see the ancient and his donkey splashing through the tall reeds. The old man stopped and looked at him curiously. "What ails you, young one? Did you think I was a keft?" "Nay," Ranofer muttered, but his heart was still pounding from the nervous start he had given. To cover it, he waded a little further, pushed aside the last fringe of papyrus, pretending to study the bright-colored sails that dotted the river. The ancient followed, talking cheerfully. "It's a fine sight, isn't it, to see the river full to its brim again? Makes a man work with a will. I've a good load today, but by the grace of Osiris. I'll wager the sailmakers will greet me with shouts of joy and load me with coppers. Oh, aye, certainly. May set take their stingy hides. They'll give me as little as I'll take." The ancient chuckled and loosed his donkey to drink. "But why worry? Tomorrow everyone will have cakes and beer. Aye," he mused, "great Osiris is ready to loose his flood over the land once more. Seen any hangings lately?" For a moment the noisy sucking of the donkey was the only answer to the familiar joke. Then Ranofer said, "Nay." The word came out so choked that the old man turned to peer at him. "What ails you, young one?" he asked again. "Nothing." Ranofer's bare toes dug convulsively into the mud. I was only thinking of those wicked ones we saw hanging there that day. Ancient, how was their crime found out?" He could feel the old man still watching him, though he kept his own eyes on the sails. "Why," the ancient answered slowly, "they were followed." "Followed to the valley?" Startled out of his nervousness, Ranofer turned to stare at him. "Aye, to the valley, to the tomb itself, and into the tomb." "Into the tomb? But who would dare?" "One who loved his Pharaoh and the gods of Egypt. He dared," the ancient said simply. His one eye was shrewd and very thoughtful. "Why do you ask me, young one? What do you know of the tomb thieves, save what I tell you?" Nothing at all," Ranofer said quickly. I am merely curious." "Aye, curious. I know the ways of boys. They are like cats who thrust their noses into everything and oftentimes are sorry. You had best save your curiosity, young one, for safer subjects." Ranofer swallowed and did not answer. The ancient was still studying him as if trying to see straight through his eyes and into his heart, and Ranofer was beginning to feel alarmingly transparent. "Well, I must take my leave," he stammered, edging away. "We will meet tomorrow at daybreak, the three of us?" Aye, of course." "And nothing ails you?" "Nay." Ranofer turned and left abruptly, forgetting to mumble so much as "live forever" in his haste to get away. Only after he was well beyond the thicket and emerging into the dusty lane did he call down Amon's protection on the old man and on himself, who needed it far more, for when Gaboo set out tomorrow for the Valley of the Tombs of the Kings, he knew he must follow.